But anybody who's grown up on a farm understands that when you turn off the road and you start driving up to the house, what's the first thing that comes running out to greet you?
I don't know, is he going to kill his dog? I mean, he might. He's the kind answer is he's expecting to sacrifice an animal.
Yeah.
That some animal is going to come out to greet me.
Right, coming out.
That's what I'm going to sacrifice.
Right.
But he leaves the door open to whatever, whoever, which does not preclude persons. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bible and Archaeology podcast, the place for conversations and questions about the lands, civilizations, and archaeology of the Bible. Bob, this week we are turning to two of the stories that you never see in Sunday school usually.
Right.
And if you see them in lists, they're among those like wild stories that you can't believe made it into the Bible. And here's the quick overview. But in those lists, what typically does not happen is a discussion of, okay, well, why is this story then within the Bible? Because both of these stories have their wild elements and details within them that definitely make you go,
Yeah, that's right.
And yet, they chose to keep them and preserve them and renegotiate them later. We're going to leave that stuff to the side. We're going to be focusing here on, okay, so what does the Bible say when we're turning to these stories? So the two that we're going to get into is the story of Judah and Tamar from Genesis 38.
Right, one of my favorite stories, one of my absolute favorite stories.
And a horrific story and a good story and a bad story and many things. Right. And then the story of Jephthah's daughter from the book of Judges, Judges 11. Another one, very similar horrific story that has other elements within it as well. So we're going to go through what it is in case you've never heard these stories before. We'll do the quick spark notes. Go and read them. But the quick spark notes of what it is. Some of what the problems are, and then some of why they're still here. So if we start with the story of Judah and Tamar, Bob, one of your favorite stories, I think maybe let's start there. Why would you say this one is one of your favorites?
It is one of my favorites because it is a story about a woman taking her redemption into her own hands and overcoming these men, in this case, Judah, a patriarch, who is deliberately trying to keep her down. He's basically not only taking advantage of her, but he's then going to try to frame her. And she's like, no, I'm gonna do this myself. I'm going to redeem myself, essentially. And Judah is forced to confess at the end, "You're more righteous than I." That's the key line that we're looking for. She is more righteous than I am. It's the mic drop moment of this story. And again, unless you understand the background, the context of this story, it's a story.
Well, even if you understand the background, it's
a tough one. But it's one that gets. I had heard it once in elementary school, when I was young, when I was in that age, elementary school age, and I'll admit this when we get there, I didn't understand what was actually being said. And it's laughable because then nobody ever bothered to explain it. This is one of those banned from Sunday school stories. I love to lecture on this here at the university. I think most students just don't understand it because people are embarrassed to talk about it.
It has a lot of the elements in it that make people skip it and enough elements that require you to bring in background knowledge from other texts and other traditions. So if we do the quick overview in case you are thinking, yeah, I'm one of those people that has never heard this story before. Genesis 38, the story of Judah and Tamar. What is the quick paraphrase of the rundown?
Right. By the way, it's tucked in there in the middle of the Joseph story.
Which we will come to.
Right. It's tucked in the middle of the Joseph narrative. But Judah and Tamar. All right. So it starts out Genesis 38. Judah gets married to a woman, and he has three sons, Onan, and Shelah. So Judah, the patriarch, has three sons. Okay. And takes a wife named Tamar. But the Genesis 38:7 says that is wicked and God kills him. So first of all, it's like Er's a bad guy and God just goes and kills
for unspecified wickedness.
Doesn't say why.
Just, it is nice and vague.
You're raw and you're dead. So God puts to death. So now Judah has a son who is dead, but he was married, and so now he's got this widow daughter-in-law. And he says in verse 8, Judah says to the second son, Onan, go into your brother's wife, and the word go into is very literal. This is the euphemism that they use for go have sex with your brother's wife.
Also just a word that can mean travel, to go,
right.
It's the same word.
It's the same word, right? But it's go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of the brother-in-law to her, raise up offspring for your brother. And if you don't know the rule here in ancient Judaism, you're like, what's going on here?
What are you asking this brother to do
Correct.
For his deceased brother?
Correct. The rule here is the rule of the Yibum, right? This is what was commonly called Levirate marriage. And one thing is important to point out, this doesn't derive from the tribe of Levi. Levirate doesn't come from that. It actually comes from Latin. It comes from levir, meaning the husband's brother. So the rule here is actually goes to Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 10. And this is a way in societies that don't have yet established concepts of an afterlife. How do you live on? You live on through your children. You live on through your children. So you have to have kids so that not only your name can live on, but so that people can be protected and that property can be protected. So dies, his wife doesn't have a child. So the rule in Deuteronomy 25, 5 says, this is word of God, right? When a brother resides together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the deceased shall not get remarried outside the family to a stranger. The wife cannot, she's not allowed to get remarried. Her husband
outside of the family.
Outside of the family.
Outside of the family.
The husband's brother shall go into her, here's our word again, taking her in marriage, taking her, and performing the duty of the husband's brother to her. And the firstborn whom she bears shall succeed to the name of the deceased brother, so that the name may not be blotted out of Israel. Now that's the key point. If a man marries a woman and the man dies before they have children, this man's brother actually has to have sex with the widow and produce a child. And the child is going to be understood to be the dead brother's son, legally.
Right.
For the purposes of inheriting property.
Yes.
For them
an important detail for the story of Genesis 38.
Correct. So that child's got to go 10, 11, 12, when the bar mitzvah time, when it's this halakhic age of accountability, when it becomes a man and he can legally inherit things, then that child takes on the name of the deceased brother, and he can now inherit the property. He can take care of the mother. He can take care of and he manages the farm. Now, the mom's still going to do it, but legally this child can now inherit all the property. That's the key. And it says, but if the man has no desire to marry the brother's widow, then the brother's widow shall go up to the elders at the gate and say, my brother refuses to perpetuate the brother's name. He will not perform the duty. The elders of the town have to come to him and they have to swear each other out. They spit in his face, and this is the story of Ruth.
Yes.
So this is what goes on in Ruth chapter 4 when Poloni Almoni, Mr. So-and-so doesn't want to do the duty, right? And we'll look at this in a second. All right, so that's Levirate marriage. This is the Yibum in Deuteronomy 25. You have to have that as the context, okay? So we go back over to Genesis 38. So Judah says to Onan, go into your brother's wife and perform your duty. This is Deuteronomy 25. You have to do this. This is your job. But
your job is to get her pregnant, specifically.
Get her pregnant.
She needs to bear a son, more specifically.
And why? So that your brother, this is your brother, so that he can have a son. You're providing the son, but so that he can legally have a son, so that his name won't be blotted out, so that he can inherit property. You're doing this for your family. You're doing this for your brother. You're doing this for your brother's widow. This is a righteous thing that you're supposed to do. God said to do it. All right. Genesis 38:9. But since Onan knew that the offspring would not be his own, and then you have this, he spilled his semen on the ground. whenever he went into his brother's wife, right? And he would not give offspring to his brother. Now, when I first read this, when this was first read to me, now again, I did hear about it in elementary school. It was never explained to me. So I thought, oh, well, they're all farmers out there. It's an agrarian. So, he.
Well, and specifically the NRSV here is translating semen, but the word itself is the same word for seed.
It's seed. You see what I did there? The NRSV said spilled his semen on the ground.
They're helping you out.
I didn't have that back then.
Right. If you're looking at other translations, you may
James,
be.
the NRSV, the New American Standard, what I grew up on, it said spilled his seed. And that's a zerah. It's the seed. So he spilled his seed. So I was thinking he's got his bag of seed, just like a farmer, and he's going around and he's throwing his seed. I go, what? He spilled his seed. Well, you're supposed to plant your seed. You don't want to be wasteful. So he's being wasteful. I never knew that that's what this was about. Then I was told when I was older that this was about masturbation. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Can't do that. Can't even say it.
And this is where you get onanism.
Right.
From.
This is onanism. So if you have sex or you do the mechanics of creating semen, but it's not for the purposes of sex within the context of marriage, God gets very angry. Monty Python wrote a whole song about this, right? If sperm is wasted, God gets quite irate, right?
Yes.
So if you spill your semen on the ground, God gets mad. And how do we know God gets mad?
Because verse 10 says he puts him to death also.
What he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also.
Yeah.
So I was always taught Onan spilled his seed on the ground. It's like masturbating, right? And God killed him for it. So I was always taught, so don't masturbate or God's going to kill you, right? Don't do that. And I was like, oh, can't do that, right? So I thought that God, what the thing that happened that displeased God was the masturbation, was the spilling your seed on the ground. I had no idea that the thing that Onan did that displeased God was a violation of this brotherly duty of the Levirate marriage.
Well, it requires you to know the backstory of Deuteronomy 25.
Correct.
And to take a different level of care in reading the story that moves past why is this in a sensational story list? Okay, you're going to have something like brothers being struck down by God. You're going to have something like spilling a seed. You have those, yes. But there's a concern for the humanity and care for an individual within that.
Right.
That maybe, is not quite as sensational as what spilling the seed has to do, but is a required background for, this is just the backstory for the story itself.
Correct. We haven't
you have this, he gets struck down, and Judah says, you got to get out of here. You're killing all my sons.
Right. No,
for some reason.
Yeah, the Black Widow thing, right?
Something's happening and all the sons are dying. So you go back to your dad's house, which you shouldn't do.
Right.
You go back to your dad's house. And when the third son is old enough, fine, you'll get to marry him too.
Correct. Now, we need to establish one other thing. We need to discuss one other thing, and that is, look at 38:9 at the beginning there. He knew that the offspring would not be his. Now, what does that actually mean? Is it just him being selfish? This isn't going to be my child. This is going to be my brother's child. So I only want kids that are mine. Yeah, okay, fine. Your own. It is going to be his child, but legally it's not his child, which means economically it's not going to be his child. Here's what this actually means financially. It means that every time he goes in and does his brotherly duty with this woman, he is not just sexually abusing her. He's not just taking sexual advantage of her. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing and having sex with her. But he's pulling out, right? He's literally stopping the process and not getting her pregnant on purpose. So that means he's got to go in and do it again. And that means he's got to go in and do it again. And that means he's got to go in and do it again, right? So he's not getting her pregnant, which means he's getting to have sex with her without actually accomplishing what he's supposed to be doing. So that's sexual abuse of this brother's widow, right? So one. But there's also the economic abuse, and that's this. Once he creates a child, right? That child is understood to be his dead brother's son legally, which means that dead brother's son is going to inherit that property. So as soon as that clock starts, you got, 12 years or whatever the son. But while that process takes place, he is responsible for his brother's widow's property. He's got to help her maintain that farm, whatever the property is that the son is going to inherit. So he's got to take the risk of managing. Maybe there's a famine, maybe there's a bad year, maybe bad crops. He's also going to get to benefit economically from that property as well. And the longer he can put that off, right, the more he can benefit economically. Well, she's not getting pregnant. What is she going to do? Complain against him? They're going to believe him, not her. I did my thing. She doesn't necessarily know what's going, right? They're in the tent, it's dark, whatever. So he's going to lie. But what he's doing is he's not only taking sexual advantage of her, he's taking economic advantage, because the longer she doesn't get pregnant, the more he can benefit economically from her estate, if you will. Okay? Because as soon as she has a son, that son's going to inherit that. And in case you were like, I'm not sure about that, go over and look at Ruth chapter 4. Right? So remember, Boaz and Ruth are like, they're into each other, and she uncovers his feet, and they're like, all right, I want you, you want me, but there's this next of kin who's closer. Let's go to the city gates. I'll present you to him, and if he wants you, he's got to redeem you. But if not, I'm totally into you. I want you. Okay? So look at Ruth chapter 4. They went to the city gate and they sat down, and here comes, literally it says Poloni Almoni. They won't even give him a name. Mr. So-and-so, right? Come over here, sit down. Boaz took 10 men, they put him down, sit down here. And he said to the next of kin, Naomi has come back from Moab and is selling this parcel of land. It's all about the land right now that belonged to our kinsman Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, here in the presence of everybody around, you can buy this land. And if you want to redeem it, redeem it. But if not, let me know, because I'll redeem it. And the guy says, yeah, land, I'll take it. I redeem it. And then Boaz, pulls the rug out and he says, by the way, on the day that you acquire the land from Naomi, you will also acquire Ruth, the Moabite, the widow of the dead man, to maintain the dead man's name on the inheritance. And the guy then realizes, oh, wait, I'm going to acquire this property, but then I'm going to have to give her a child. And when that child grows up, he's going to acquire all this land that I've been managing, that I acquired. And I'm just going to have to give it to him. Oh, I don't want to take that economic risk. So no. You see, it's the economics of it that he doesn't want to get into. I don't want to take on this responsibility. So then he says, at this, I cannot redeem it for myself and damage my own inheritance. It's about the economics, not just about the sex, right? Take my right and redeem it for yourself. And then they did the swappy swap. And then Boaz and Ruth go on. So you can see from the Levirate marriage in Ruth chapter 4 that this is about the economics. So if you go back then to Genesis 38, Onan knew that the offspring would not be his is not just about the sex.
Right.
It's about the economic consequence of what he would be doing. He's not just taking sexual advantage of her. He's taking economic advantage of her. And God doesn't like this. It's not because he spilled his seed on the ground, the actual mechanics of it. He's taking sexual and economic advantage of his dead brother's widow. And God says, we don't do that.
Which is a part of the problem within this that, right, is a significant, as you're reading through this, you should make your ears perk up probably, rightfully. And is yet the part of this that does not get talked about.
Correct.
Largely because this story usually doesn't get talked about.
Right.
But even then when it does, it requires the unpacking of, okay, let's step back to Deuteronomy, let's look ahead to Ruth, and what does that mean for what is going on here? And the precariousness of her particular situation, that's required to understand why she does what she does at the end of 38.
Right.
Because if you don't know or can't fully understand the context of that, when you get down to the end after she has been sent back to her father's house and she hears that Judah is coming out, you're looking at her decisions and the sequence of events and going, this feels it is very risky.
Yeah.
And what is the context for you to do that? So you need that part. So if we go there.
Yeah. Judah says, look, I lost my first son because of you. Again, they're always blaming the woman. I lost my second son because of you, not knowing that the second son was taking sexual and economic advantage of her. Go back to your father's house, and I'll call you when my youngest son is actually of age, right? He's too young to produce a child. So get out of here, go home. And of course, Judah's intent is never just go back home and hopefully you'll marry somebody or you'll die or something, and I won't have to deal with this problem anymore. So Tamar realizes she's being shown the door. She's being handed her hat. And Judah's trying to dispose of this issue, this problem. He's trying to get rid of Tamar. And so she realizes he's not going to redeem me. I'm going to have to do this myself. And so she goes back home. In the course, basically, Tamar went and lived with her father's house. In the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. And Judah's time was mourning went over, right? So Judah's own wife dies. He mourns her. And then he's going to go up with some sheep shearers. And he's going to go, the Bible says, shear his sheep, right? So he's going to go up to the town next. And Tamar was told, your father-in-law is going to go up to Timnah to shear his sheep, right? And so she gets this idea. And she goes, I'm going to put off my widow's garments that I'm required to stay in until Judah gives me his youngest son. And it says, put on a veil, wrapped herself up, and sat down at the entrance on the road to Timnah there. And she saw that Shelah has grown up. She knew that Shelah now had come of age and that Judah was not giving her his son. Judah was obligated to redeem her with the youngest son, right? She had been grown up, but he had not given him to her in marriage. So Judah wasn't fulfilling his promise. So what she says is, I'm going to go there to the entrance of the city, and I'm going to redeem myself. This is incredibly risky. Everything she's doing is not only violating the way it's supposed to do, but she realizes that Judah's not going to do it, right? And she's engaging in essentially prostitution, right?
Well, that's what he thinks her to
correct.
Be. As he comes in,
right,
he sees her attire,
right?
He sees her location, and he thought her to be a prostitute, is what the text tells us. So he goes in,
right,
and goes over to her.
Right, 38:16, Genesis 38:16. He went over to her at the side of the road and said, doesn't recognize her. She's got her face veiled. Come, let me come into you, for he did not know that this was his daughter-in-law. And she says, what are you going to pay me? What are you going to give me that you may come into me? And he says, well, I brought all my flocks here. I will send a kid from my flock, right? I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today, right? I'll give you something. And she's like, oh, no, we're not, I know this game, right? You need to give me some collateral. You need to give me a pledge so that when we're done doing this deed here, I know that you're not just going to run off. You're not going to, so give me a pledge. And he said, okay, what pledge shall I give you? And she goes, you give me your signet, right? Kind of your official stamp, and the cord and your staff. So usually you had some kind of signet that you either wore on your finger or that you wore on a cord that was tied to you. So this was like your lanyard and your ID that you signed everything with, and your staff, which is like your staff, the tribal staff. This is your sign that you're the leader. And he says, give me those things and as pledge, and then when you bring me payment, I'll give them back to you. That's your collateral. And so he agreed, and he gave them to her, and he went into her, and she conceived by him. So now the game is afoot, right? So what she has done, as she has had Judah, this is important, an eligible redeemer. Remember, the Levirate marriage law says the next of kin. And it was a brother, and he died because he was taking advantage of her. And Judah withheld the youngest brother, wasn't going to let him go in, right, Shelah. So the next of kin is Judah himself, but he wasn't going to do this. So so Tamar actually tricked him into being the redeemer. Okay, but Judah doesn't know he's done this. So after he goes out to get the kid, to get the payment, she bails.
Yes, she got what she came for. She
flees the scene.
She was not coming here for the goat.
So she took off the veil, put on her garments of widowhood, but she kept the signet. She kept the ID. All right. So when Judah sent the kid and to come back to recover the pledge, he couldn't find her. And he asked everybody, hey, where'd that prostitute go? Hey, come on, I got to get my ID back, man.
Well, he doesn't ask. He sends his worker.
He sends the town people, right?
He sends someone else.
Where's the temple prostitute, right? No prostitute here, right? And he goes, I wonder who I just had sex with, right? So he returned to Judah, and he said, I haven't found her. Nobody's seen her. So Judah said, okay, shh. Let's don't tell anybody what happened here today, right? Otherwise, they're just going to mock us, right? This can't get out. I sent this kid. You couldn't find her. So he goes back home. No, curtain down, curtain up. 3 months later, right? Judah finds out that Tamar is pregnant. Tamar is pregnant. Now, Judah knows, because he's done it intentionally, he hasn't authorized his youngest son to go do the Levirate marriage, do the duty of the brother-in-law for Tamar. He knows that hasn't happened, and yet she's pregnant. So she's obviously violated the covenant, right? He tried to get rid of her, hoping that she would get pregnant or hoping that she would die or something. And now she's pregnant. Clearly she's committed adultery. Clearly. So now he can solve the problem. He can accuse her of adultery, bring her out here, have her stoned, and then he doesn't have to give the youngest son, right? And no more God-killing sons, no more dying of sons, right? No more black widow, being all done. So your daughter-in-law has played the whore, this is the NRSV, not me, right? Moreover, she's pregnant as a result of her whoredom, right? Again, NRSV, not me. And Judah said, bring her out, let's burn her. So Judah not only has committed the unrighteous crime of withholding that son and violating the covenant of God, but now he's going to execute her and solve his problem. Reminds me of King David and Uriah, right? I've committed this thing, and I'm going to cover it up by committing another crime. And so here's the beautiful part, right? As she comes out, she sent word to her father-in-law. He's like, by the way, we're going to burn you, and if you committed adultery, we're going to kill that person too, right? Because it's the adulterer as well. And she goes, it was the owner of these items that made me pregnant. And she holds up that signet ring, and she holds up that staff. And this is Genesis 38:26. And this is the line. This is the mic drop line. And he's like, oh, crap, right? Judah acknowledged them and said, she is more righteous. She is more in the right than I, since I did not give her my son Shelah. And he did not lie with her again, which is what you're supposed to do.
Correct.
You give her the child, and then she remains there. It's not like she becomes his wife. So in the end, Tamar brought about her own redemption because the men in her life, right, Onan, and Judah were all taking advantage of her. They wouldn't do the things that they were supposed to do. They weren't caring. Died, right? Now, he was evil. God says it was evil, but he died. And then the people who were supposed to care for her, that were supposed to take care of her, wouldn't do it. They were actually plotting against her. Onan was plotting against her, taking sexual and economic advantage of her. And now Judah, for fear of his son, is sending her away. And then when he sees an opportunity to kill her, he tries. And so she takes her own redemption into her own hands and says, by the way, the guy who did this to me.
Well, a detail I think is interesting in that is in verse 25, as she's being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law. Because I feel like this is one of those moments where, well, what is the scene?
Yeah.
She sends word to him, it was the owner of these. It's not necessarily public.
Yeah.
Like, I think there is an option where she does this publicly.
Yeah.
But it's not explicit that she does that. It makes it sound like this happens privately in a way to almost surprisingly save him the losing of face.
That's a good point. I've always put in my head, this is always a public burning, right? He's bringing them. Yeah, he's bringing her out. And he's like, oh, we can burn her, and I'm gonna show her. And I've always depicted this as a public
as like the public exposure of him.
He's going to show, I was in the right the whole time. It's a hypocrisy to the max, right? And you're saying that maybe she's saying,
as she was being brought out, she sent word. Now, so there's something happening where there's a group and there's bringing her.
Right.
Somehow she's able to get word to him. He's not there. She doesn't turn around and talk to him. She sends word to him and says, it's these ones. And he acknowledges them and says, she's more than right. We're going to leave this thing be, which is an interesting change in that, but still brings about a different question, I think, for Genesis 38. Because if this had been a private story where this thing happened, his exposure had been private as far as being the father, there wasn't the public moment at the city gates, maybe, but Genesis 38 then is still the public moment for this figure, Judah, who's a name that in most cases the text is very interested in protecting and preserving and establishing.
Correct.
But here is painting him in a very negative light. So I think that opens up another question of why does this story stay? We have lots of reasons for internally. There's abuses that take place and potential reasons for why this story stays, to say condemnation of those abuses.
Right.
And these are reasons why those shouldn't be there. However, it's being attached to Judah, I think opens a different set of questions for, well, given his importance, the name, why does this stay given it's him? Why doesn't this kind of drift into the background? If maybe this happened in private where he gets exposed in private, why doesn't it stay private?
I think a couple of things. One, they did clean it up later.
Yes.
I can't remember if it's Jubilees. I think it was in Jubilees. I have to double check. I should have done my homework here. I think it's in Jubilees where an angel comes to Judah and says, I need you to go into this prostitute right now because, this is part of God's plan. And people in the comments can double check. I'll go double check as well. But I think it's Judah's not doing something he shouldn't be doing. He's told to do it by God, by an emissary of God, because this becomes part of the birth line of Jesus, right? This becomes part of the genealogy of Jesus. So much so that Matthew talks about it, right? Matthew, by name, is going to mention Tamar, is one of the names that comes up. So I also think that in the Hebrew Bible, it was important to recall and recount the patriarchs of Israel, good and bad. They didn't live in a time, and they didn't think it necessary to do, as some are wont to do today, to rewrite the story and to whitewash the story so that only the good things are there and all of the things that were bad get swept under the rug, and we only want the best for our leaders. We never want to talk about the bad stuff. Let's get rid of all the bad things about our leaders or our history or don't talk about that because that makes us look bad. In the Hebrew Bible, they were very comfortable saying, this is our history. This is who we are. Let's own our history, and let's talk about the good and let's talk about the bad, because we can look at our heroes, look at our patriarchs and say, yeah, these are our patriarchs. These are our heroes. These are our ancestors. But we can also learn just as much from the bad. And we can say, this happened. Let's try not to do that again. You can learn as much from failure, if not more, than you can from success. Anybody who's ever played a sport knows that you learn as much from failure as you do from success. So we should stop trying to whitewash history and brush all of our failures and all of our, whether it's our country, whether it's our patriarchs, our history, our founding fathers, right? Even our modern leaders. Stop trying to get rid of the bad stuff and learn from this bad stuff. And I appreciate the Hebrew Bible for leaving these stories in.
I think it's also worth noting, you mentioned at the beginning that this story is slid into the middle of the Joseph narrative.
Yes.
They were with Joseph, things are going along, and then it's a hard left turn into Genesis 38, leaving you dazed and confused, looking around saying, what is this? And then very quickly in 39, previously on Joseph, we're meeting up with him. However, 39 is the story of Joseph and Potiphar's wife.
Yeah.
And so we move from one story having to do with abuse and taking advantage of individuals into another story of attempted abuse and taking advantage of individuals. Another story where articles of clothing play an important role in identifying who is who in a moment of accusation, one where someone comes out as in the right and one where someone doesn't, one where it is Joseph, one where it is Judah. So there is an interesting 1 and 2 looking at 38 and then looking at it again with 39 to say, is there a reason? Is there a reason why this came in here to say, we've got this Potiphar's wife story, and she pulls out the cloak to say, look, it's the one who had this. Is the one who tried to do this. And Joseph says, it's not I, but the punishment comes through. It puts the two of them into another spin almost of well, there's meaning, and you turn and look at it another way, and there can be another meaning. And you turn it and look at it another way, and there's another meaning, which is a part of the beauty. While there is so much that is you look at this and you shake your head and you go, maybe I wish this wasn't here.
Right. No, but and so you're suggesting the juxtaposition of 38 and 39
bring something new.
You both have articles of clothing, but one, Judah is doing something unrighteous. He's doing something that he shouldn't be doing. Whereas Joseph, even though the deck is stacked against him, right? This evidence is being used against him. He is righteous and he is remaining faithful. He is in the right and he's remaining faithful to God. And even though he goes to prison, right, God is faithful. And so if you do what's right, if you're still doing what's right, I recall the story of Daniel, right, when the guys are peeking through the
when he's praying in the closet, he's not supposed to be.
Right. If you do what's right regardless, even if the deck is stacked against you, God will come through and will deliver you. These are the stories that are in there. Whereas if you're doing something that's wrong and you have this evidence, it's going to come back to bite you in the rear.
So just another thing when you're looking at this.
I hadn't thought of that.
It's just another one of those, you have 38 and you look at 39 and you have to ask, why in the world is this in the middle of Joseph?
Plopped right in there.
But there are those little moments of echo, some of which I think also maybe are trying to change some of the perception of Judah in the moment of, the clothing, how does it get used? One who admits to being in the wrong, Judah. One who doesn't, Potiphar's wife. In some ways, maybe a little bit of an attempt at look, he could have lied about it like this. You have an instance where somebody's lying in this situation and they're able to get away with it in a position of power, in a position of authority over someone else. Judah doesn't take that path. So while he is still very much in the wrong in the eyes of the text here, I think that parallel does a little bit of a tinge of but he could have been worse. It almost feels like a moment where it goes, but he could have lied about it. He could have lied and followed through with the claim of, and we're going to put her to death.
Right.
And then where does this text go?
Right.
So Genesis 38, a weird one that is very deservedly on the list of weird stories that you probably maybe don't know as well as you think you might know. And you probably don't know that it's in the Bible. And if you do know in the Bible, why it's in the Bible. So there's some answers there. Right. Not clean answers, because at the end of the day, you're probably still listening and going, yeah, but still, why is that there?
Right.
Couldn't we have come about that point a different way? Yeah, there probably could have been another way to come about the point of saying, don't abuse people.
Right.
That's not how they chose to go about it.
Right.
If we turn then to another story of abusing individuals, and we look at Judges chapter 11.
Yeah, one of your favorites.
The story of Jephthah and Jephthah's daughter. Is this one of, there's a connection here that tags this on to one of my favorite individuals.
Right.
But this is in that phase of Judges where the judges are doing what the judges do, which is the people, they sin and then they get oppressed and then they cry out and a judge is raised. And Jephthah falls into that. And in some of the ways where judges don't always do the redeeming the way you might think the judges need to do the redeeming. Sometimes they are just going around and killing people.
Right.
And that is the way the judge brings about the redemption. Right. They don't always kill the people that you think maybe they should kill. And that's where Judges 11 slides in, because he kills some of the people you might think he's going to kill, and then he kills one person that you probably don't expect him to kill.
And something that we've seen take place earlier in the Bible where kind of God
almost
steps in.
Place.
Yeah. Well, God steps in. God steps in. You're like, all right, where are you now? So why don't you walk us through Judges 11 and let us know kind of what's going on. Again, this is a irritating story, I guess we could say. But walk us through what's going on in Judges 11.
Judges 11, we're picking up, again, they're in a period of not doing so great.
Right.
And Jephthah is the son, we're told, of a prostitute.
Yeah.
And he's a mighty warrior. But as Gilead's wife bore other sons to him, Gilead is Jephthah's father, his wife's sons grew up and they drove him away. An inheritance concern here, ringing some bells. Mm-hmm. You shall not inherit anything in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman, so they drive him away. Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking, well, why are you putting these two stories together? They're both weird. Mm-hmm. They both have to do with abusive individuals, and they both have economic concerns.
Yeah.
Similar through lines through a lot of these stories in the Bible. What a shock. And so they drive him away, and Jephthah, being a great warrior, gathers together a crew of outlaws, of mercenaries, of mighty men, might we call them, out in the fringe territories. And in time, the Ammonites are causing some problems, and the elders come to Jephthah and say, we would really love it if you would come back. We know that we've done some things. Apologies for what they did to you, but if you would come back, we would appreciate it. Bring some of your warriors with you and help us out. And his response is, fine, but I need to be number one.
Yeah, no, and this is fair, right? We pushed you away. We treated you like, hey, you're not of our noble class. You're this lower class. So get out of here. In the meantime, he becomes,
he becomes the guy that you want.
John Cena, right? He becomes this big, badass guy, right? And he's out there fighting, and all of us, and we keep saying Jephthah, and that's how it's translated in English. But this is Jephthah, right?
Yes.
This is for Hebrew-speaking people. And so he comes out there, and now he's this big, strong dude, and he's got this band of warriors, and now they're being oppressed, and they're like, sorry about that.
Wasn't there a guy around here who was like really good at this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Where did he go?
We could use him now. This is always remind you, if you've got people that you're like, wow, he's from Fresno. We don't really, we keep them around, right? You could use folks like us on occasion. We need enforcers on occasion, right?
And they say, we will let you come back. We'd be happy to have you come back.
We need you right now.
And his deal is fine, make me in charge. And they say, surely the Lord will be a witness. Right. We will do as you say. We've got a vow.
Right.
We've got a story with some vows. We got vow number 1. It's between the elders and Jephthah saying, I will come back if you make me in charge. They say, fine, the Lord will see to it. Shake hands, we're good. And then he does what they have brought him back to do.
Right.
He does some stuff with the Ammonites. There's some cracking of skulls. There's a battle that takes place. But in order for this to happen, and in order for Jephthah to feel comfortable going into battle and being sure about this, he makes another vow.
Right.
After in verse 29, we're told the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. So the Spirit descends, and the way it happens in Judges sounds a lot like Samson,
just
right?
Like Samson, right?
Spirit comes on, you're going to do some things. He makes a vow to the Lord and says, if you will give the Ammonites into my hand, then, and the NRSV here does whoever, which spoils the plot a little bit.
Right.
Whatever, let's say, whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return victorious from the Ammonites shall be the Lord's, to be offered up by me as a burnt offering. And so he goes and he fights and he wins.
Right.
Whatever comes out of the doors of my house, I will offer as a burnt offering to you.
Right.
Sound good? God says, apparently sounds good because you win.
Right. Now, this sounds like an absurd request, right? Whatever comes out of my house, we look at this, and especially if we know the story, we're like,
especially if it's translated whoever,
right? But this sounds like, who makes a request like this? But this was not an uncommon request to sacrifice something upon your victory. This was incredibly common in multiple cultures. But whatever. Why was it something, whatever comes out of my house?
Whatever opens the door to our world of domestic archaeology.
There we go.
Where in the house, it's going to be people living there as well as animals that will be kept on the bottom floor. So maybe, is he meaning a person who comes out? It doesn't preclude it. He doesn't say any animal. He could have. Right. He could have easily said, the first animal that comes out of my house, I will sacrifice. He doesn't say that.
But anybody who's grown up on a farm understands that when you turn off the road and you start driving up to the house, what's the first thing that comes running out to greet you?
I don't know. Is he going to kill his dog? I mean, he might. He's the kind answer is he's expecting to sacrifice an animal.
Yeah.
That some animal is going to come out to greet me.
Right, coming out.
That's what I'm going to sacrifice.
Right.
But he leaves the door open to whatever, whoever, which does not preclude persons. And you should also probably hear some alarm bells here if you're familiar with your Homeric traditions. Before the Trojan War, there is hey, we've got a problem. We need to go into battle. We can't quite get there. Maybe a sacrifice will take place. And so if you are familiar with the story of Iphigenia, yes, there are many parallels between the story here of Jephthah and Jephthah's daughter and the story of Iphigenia, who sometimes gets spared and sometimes does not, depending on the tradition that you read into, whether she becomes a deer and is swept away or if she's sacrificed on the altar. And so he wins, he goes home. As he's going home, there was his daughter coming out to meet him with timbrels and with dancing. She was his only child. He had no son or daughter except her. Driving home the point, no other kids, only her.
Sounds like Isaac, doesn't it?
Sounds like Isaac, except there's not going to be a ram that pops up here because he says, "Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low." An interesting shift in blame.
Yeah, right.
Why did you come out?
What are you doing?
You brought me low. You have become the cause of great trouble, for I opened my mouth to the Lord, and I cannot take back my vow. And she said to him, "My father, if you've opened your mouth to the Lord, do to me according to what has gone out of your mouth. Now the Lord has given you vengeance against your enemies, the Ammonites." He doesn't tell her what the vow is.
Right.
He says, "I've made a vow." And she says, "Fine, do to me according to your vow." Does she know what the vow is?
This is good. This goes back to that same thing about when Abram, agrees to sacrifice Isaac, right? It's, does Isaac know?
Does Isaac
it's
know?
Like, it's like, I see the wood, right? I see where's the sacrifice, right? Where's the lamb? And he's like, God will provide. And, Isaac has to be like starting to think it. And then the question is, did he know? And was he being a good and faithful servant as well? Was he like, okay, yeah.
Which is the later tradition that
Correct.
Isaac knew.
Correct.
And Isaac was a willing participant
Correct.
as a sign of his righteousness.
Correct.
Not the version you necessarily get in Genesis 22.
No.
Where is it? And here I am. And you go through, and there's the replacement of the ram.
Right.
In Judges 11, I made a vow, he says, you've brought me low. She says, do according to your vow.
It's your fault. And she's like, yeah, okay, do what you got to do.
Do I know that I am saying you can sacrifice me?
Right.
Maybe. Word has gotten back. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe it's you're going to do something else. But it leaves it real vague because she then says, let this thing be done for me. Give me 2 months. I'm going to go wander. I'm going to bewail my virginity, she says, with my companions.
Right.
And at the end of those 2 months, she comes back. And he did according to the vow he had made. She had never slept with a man. At the end of this story, we know the vow is, I will offer as a burnt offering whatever comes out.
Right.
It's less specific than I think we normally assume at the end, because it says he fulfills the vow according to the vow. I made a vow, do according to your vow. It doesn't give us and he offers her as a burnt offering. Is it because we're really uncomfortable with being super specific about it? And so we're just going to say, we're going to do according to the vow. She doesn't get a ram will take your place of Genesis 32.
Right.
It doesn't end with a condemnation of Jephthah for making the vow or for fulfilling the vow, because Judges 12 continues on with him still judging.
Right.
There is and because of this thing, he did something wicked in the eyes of the Lord.
Right. That comes
and is
much
struck
later.
Dead.
Right. That comes later with the rabbinic text.
He carries on. And so the text seems a little more comfortable in letting her be sacrificed than in Genesis 22.
Why would they spare a male child but be comfortable with letting a woman?
I don't know, Bob. That's something in the Hebrew Bible that just doesn't make any sense, and especially has no context in Genesis 38 of making any sense either. But you brought me low. Look what you've made me do to you.
Yeah,
now,
he's blaming her.
Now I have to offer you as a burnt sacrifice.
And I laugh to keep from crying, right?
I think another context piece in this, where we talked about the animals coming out of the house. And so there's normally the deflection of he expects an animal. He would never assume it's going to be a human. He expects the animal.
Right.
Unless, if we look around a little bit to some things where after battles and after victories, what does the Hebrew Bible tell us happens? Let's turn to Exodus 15. Mm-hmm. Let's just turn to 1 Samuel 18. Yeah. What happens? The women greet them with song. So is Jephthah fully unaware of the odds of what might happen when he comes home? And it's an animal, it's an animal, it's an animal. Or is he aware of what the tradition is? And let's say 1 Samuel 18, right? King David is out doing his thing. And as they saw David coming home, returning from killing the Philistine, verse 6, the women came out of all the towns of Israel singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tambourines, with songs, with musical instruments. So is it really supposed to be an animal? Or is he, maybe aware after a battle, returning home victorious, maybe the women come out to greet us with songs, and I'm okay with that being the deal that I strike.
This was the custom too.
That a sacrifice, a human sacrifice, is not precluded in order to be victorious. I think we could turn to the story of like the Mesha stele as well in 2 Kings 3. You're going to lose the battle, not the Israelites, but the Moabites. And what happens? We offer a child sacrifice and things turn.
The tides turn. We know, and we've done a previous video on this, that human sacrifice was practiced. It was practiced earlier on, and you can see this when it talks about all firstborn.
All the firstborn
belong to me.
All of them.
And it's not until much later that you get this caveat, this exception.
Maybe you should redeem them.
But your firstborn child you will redeem.
And not always. Sometimes it says redeem them. Sometimes it doesn't.
Correct.
We didn't quite get that fix fully integrated into the text.
Right. So again, now later on, we always talk about how these stories get retold, whether it's in the Book of Jubilees or they get reviewed and talked about in the rabbinic text. This Jephthah does not have a positive view once you get down into these later texts, because now there's a very, very basically unanimous view of that what he did was wrong. Why did he make this vow? What did he do that caused the daughter to come out?
He shouldn't have. And it's doing the same thing we do in looking at the text and going, what in the world is happening?
Why didn't God come in and spare the hand like he did with the male child Isaac?
How is this vow allowed? How is it allowed to be fulfilled? How is this something that's allowed to be set up? Why did we preserve these things? And it doesn't give quite the same kind of it's a bad thing. Like Genesis 38, where it does some condemnation of you shouldn't take advantage of, you shouldn't abuse in this situation. Judges 11, if you look at, he let her go for 2 months. If that's your attempt to say it's not really okay with it and it gave her an escape, that feels pretty soft. You get to go in the mountains for 2 months and then come back and I'll burn you back.
Yeah, you get to be on death row for a couple months.
Yeah, that's not really a satisfactory answer. And so one interesting return to this, Genesis Rabbah gives us that as a result of this, both Jephthah and Phinehas, who is supposed to be the priest that is operating in this time, still alive, surprisingly, both of them were punished. Jephthah's punishment is he died as a result of his limbs falling off. Everywhere he would go, one of his limbs would fall off, and they would bury it there. So his limbs fall away from him.
Like leprosy or some kind of...
And that is the way that Jephthah dies. And Phinehas' punishment has the divine spirit stripped from him. Because Phinehas had been chief priest, it was then he had been, he's not anymore. And so because Phinehas, as chief priest, as high priest, should have stopped him from fulfilling this vow. But Phinehas says, who am I to go to him? Jephthah says, who am I to go to him? Neither of them meet. And so she dies.
And so this is the rationale used for the high priesthood
moving to Eli.
Going from Phinehas to Eli.
Because otherwise you've got a divine promise that's supposed to make it stay with this guy and something has to happen. So then they slide a little fix in. But even these, there's a recognition that it should not have happened to her.
Right.
But it happened. It's remembered that it happened. And so then there's a punishment that needs to come to these individuals. But that text still stays.
So what's the apologetic to explain it away?
When we can't explain it away, we can't make it go away. It's still there. It's still here. And so he gets away with no punishment.
Yeah.
So we got to bring something in. And then who should be in charge? Okay, the priest should have stopped it.
Right.
When he didn't, so he needs to have some punishment as well, because they're looking at this and saying there are significant problems with this text that it doesn't address, it doesn't smooth, it doesn't rebuke. And later on, we need to get it, which is why Judges 11 ends up on those lists of, can you believe this story is in the Bible?
Right, no kidding. No kidding. And I know you're the expert on Phineas, and that, but I wasn't aware of the Genesis Rabbah telling of it's only a flesh wound, right?
Yeah, basically. And so his limbs fall off, and they look to, and it's because he was buried in the cities of Gilead, is what it tells us. And so they're like, well, how was he buried in the cities? Yeah.
Oh, so he was broken up into pieces.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and so God. Like, because Judges 12:7, and he was buried and NRSV does, in his town in Gilead. But the Hebrew itself is cities, plural. And so they're like, okay, how was he in cities? His limbs fell away. His limbs fell away from him as a punishment for what he did to his daughter.
See the knight just bouncing around on one leg.
It's not just a flesh wound when you die as a result of all of these things.
Right.
So where do you go with that? That's up to you. Genesis 38 and Judges 11, two stories that you think, why in the world is this here?
Right.
Maybe not a clean answer.
No.
But a variety of potential reasons to say, I think Genesis 38 has more internal reasons to go, there are rebukes that are happening here.
Right.
I wanted to throw Judges 11 in because it has some parallels, but also misses some of the condemnation.
But again, I'll say what I did about Jephthah, the same thing I said about Judah, right? I have always appreciated about what the Hebrew Bible does with its heroes. And that is, you don't just get the polished, whitewashed version of this hero and we get rid of all the bad stuff. These are, Samson had all kinds of problems as well. Right?
Oh boy, does he.
Right. So you get the bad with the good. And the heroes that we hold up in the Hebrew Bible, David, good grief, right? The man after God's own heart, he breaks half the commandments, right? It's the good and the bad, because we can learn not just from our successes, but from our failures. We learn from our scars. We do this collectively as a people. We do this, we learn this individually from our own failures. And this is why it's important when we study history to look at the failures of as a people, as a country, as individual that we study in history, to look at the bad with the good. It's not admitting that we're a failure. It's not admitting that we're weak. It's actually admitting that we're very strong, that we're willing to look and learn from this. It makes us stronger.
So if you're wondering, at the end of the day, why should I care about those two stories? Mm-hmm. Why are they here? There's a potential answer.
Yeah.
Maybe, there's others. There's other possibilities as well.
Right.
But they are here. They got preserved in spite of what they say.
Right.
So there's something to wrestle with there, and there's something still for us to wrestle within them.
It's also two very, very righteous women. A daughter who's willing to accept her fate in the story of Judges 11, and willing to do, this is what I understand I need to do given the circumstances, and I'm willing to accept this. And in Genesis 38, a woman who's saying, I do not accept this. I'm going to redeem myself. You get two different stories of two different ways that women had to deal with issues.
Well, and in
the ancient world.
In Judges 11, is she accepting of her fate, or is it my father, who is the warlord, has promised he will offer me as a burnt offering? It has been set, right? There is no accepting, there is no refusing. It's gonna happen.
Right.
And so she is a character in this that I think is fully acted upon as you read through.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear
so
you.
she's an interesting, and there have been a lot of interpretive traditions that have returned to her. Over time as someone who, I think a surprise in this is she does speak. Right, she gets a speaking part in this, in a story that you might expect her to simply be
nothing, be a flat character.
He returns home, she comes out, and the sacrifice is offered.
Right.
It's not much, but the line of 36 in who gets to speak in stories is a place where I think that's a surprising one. That she is given this speech in this moment.
I think somebody should write, if we haven't seen it yet, I think somebody should write a story from her point of view.
If you know about it, put it down in the comments. Mm-hmm. If you have a question about these stories that we didn't come to, let us know. You can leave a comment. You can send us an email. We are happy to hear from you. If there are other weird, odd, and confusing stories that you're like, these are the ones that I have seen on those types of lists or that I've never fully understood, let us know. We're happy to make our way to those. But for today, we will leave these two alone for the moment. Bob, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. It's a lot of fun.
It's always fun to walk through the weird stuff in the text. We hope you enjoy it. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you find us. It helps us. Hopefully it helps you stay in touch with us. But for this week, that's all we have. Until next time.